Okay, welcome to today's book review, and today we're talking about The Crown of Ashes and Blood, which is by Novaheart, and this is a science fiction novel, and I got my checklist here, and I've got some notaroos, so let's get started. Okay, so as you can tell from the title and what I just said, it's called The Crown of Ashes and Blood. It's written by Novaheart. It's a science fiction novel. It's about 220 pages, and it was released on July 4th of, I think it was last year, so that would be 2025. Also, she's like Canadian, so I think it has any bearing on Independence Day necessarily. It just happens to be July 4th. And it's written in first-person POV, and I don't think there's any age recommendations, but there's some violence and some, I guess you would say, adult dialogue. So I'd say probably mature teenagers and above, but I'm not really an expert on that, so that's just my opinion, All right. So it takes place on a future version of Earth, and there's space travel, and they go to an alien world. I don't consider that spoilers because the back blurb has some details about that. It kind of seems like a Star Wars Dune type world a little bit. The temperature there is 116 degrees Fahrenheit. It's interesting. Some of the settings is kind of tied to theme a little bit, where some of the aliens, they're in these advanced modern cities where there's technology, and then other ones are kind of more tied to nature. Mostly that. Let's see. The protagonist is named Blue. She's a young college age, a young woman, college age. And there's also a character called Riven, and then there's Gen AI, which is an artificial intelligence character. Every time I read that, I couldn't help thinking of Forrest Gump with, Forrest being I miss you, Jedi. But the AI is a character that kind of helps with exposition, ideas at times. There's also, at the beginning, there's these characters, Mac and Hudson. I assume Hudson is a reference to aliens. And then there's also these aliens called Kay and Crassus, and they're pretty interesting folks because they're aliens, so they're kind of weird, to say the least. It's pretty well done. I like it. Here. Next up is plot. So it starts out with this abduction, and she's trying to return home. It's really I think you could break it down to a simple concept. Really that's what it is. She's abducted and she's trying to return home. But the nuances of how that happens and the events that take place, that's probably the one thing. I'll get into this more in the critique section, but the pacing was really, really fast. I liked it. But the plot, even though it's simple, there's always something happening. So, themes. So, what was it all about? Well, this actually in a lot of ways kind of reminded me of Star Wars, where it was really about apathy versus belief, and technology versus nature. Kind of reminded me of in Star Wars, there's the Sith, the baddies, and then there's the Jedi who are the goody two shoes, and the goody two shoes are really into nature and meditation and goody two shoes type stuff, and then the evil people are into technology and World War II inspired uniforms and really strict and oppressive and tyrannical and draconian regimes. So that's really sort of the thing that I got from it. And there is this the conflict of technology versus nature is sort of it's not just among the aliens because they have these different factions. It's also within the characters because between Blue and Ribbon, one of them is really more of a technology enthusiast, and the other is really more of a naturalist. Not naturalist, because I think if you say naturalist, I think does that mean nudist or something? They're not nudists. I just mean that not really overjoyed with the use of technology in every facet of life. Someone who's more tied to the natural environment. And so one of the themes presented is the idea that technology kind of it's not really necessarily freeing you from nature. It's actually imprisoning you from it, and that in doing so you actually lose touch with where you came from and who you are. And that's actually interesting because you can look at that in multiple ways. It's not just the technology. She was abducted and taken from her planet. Is she forgetting where she came from? Is that why she has to get back? So there's actually the themes here are kind of more interesting. They really kind of came together at the end. So let's see. Inside the author studio. So let's see. Novaheart is a Canadian author. She has a cat named Oliver. She likes Star Trek The Next Generation. So between owning a cat and liking Star Trek The Next Generation, she has at least two redeeming qualities. That can be said for sure. And she's Canadian. let's see. She also wrote Red Rising, and she also wrote more books in this series. So if you're into a sci-fi series, you can check those out. If you don't know Novaheart from Substack, she occasionally does these like charity events and such, and she's very, very kind. I mean, even by Canadian standards, she's like really, really kind. So anyway, there's that. And I guess that's really all I have for the bio. She has more on her Amazon profile, but I'm sorry, I forgot to write it down. I'll put it on my Substack article, though. Anyway, now time for a critique. So, given how kind Novaheart is, I feel really bad saying anything critical of her work. And so, I'm just going to get this out of the way and say that the interior formatting for the paperback looks kind of like an ebook in terms of like the text being left, not like justified. You know, it's like left aligned. And some indentation could have been useful just in terms of formatting. But, you know, I got used to it as I was reading. But that would really be the only thing is like there could be a little bit of attention given to the interior formatting. It doesn't have to be typeset, but just like a little bit really would have gone a long way. This is kind of a spoiler, but Riven being present at the beginning of the story and having that be his tie-in, I thought that was really, really brilliant. I like that. That was really, really clever, the way that was done. The end of this book, to me, feels kind of like the ending of the pilot episode of a movie, where like you're introduced to the characters, the world, and the predicament, and it's going to continue. And for a series, that's probably a good thing. It's just that if you're expecting like the story to end with like something substantial and like I don't know what the word is, closure at the end, I'm not sure that that's necessarily what you're going to find. It's really going to be like there is a full and complete story, but it ends with like more yet to come. In terms of the themes, though, Star Wars begins with, say, you know, spoilers for Star Wars. The movie is almost 50 years old. Oh my god. I can't believe Star Wars is almost 50 years old. I must be really old at this point. Oh yeah, I am. Anyway, in Star Wars, there's this scene at the beginning where Luke says something like, well, I know the Empire is evil, but there's nothing I can do about it. And then, of course, if you've seen that movie, you know at the end, he blows up the freaking Death Star, which is, like, awesome. And at that point, you know, Obi-Wan tells him, you know, through, like, Force Ghosts, magic audio, you know, microphone or whatever, that, like, the Force will be with you always. And so the story of Star Wars is brilliant because it's a story about belief. And when this particular story started, at the beginning, there's, like, this meteorite that's going to destroy the Earth, and everyone's just kind of like, well, you know, life sucks and it's going to end anyway, so, oh, well, you know, and it's kind of like a Debbie Downer, nihilistic type of thing. Not saying that's wrong, I'm just saying, like, that's people's attitudes in the book. It seems to be that everyone's sort of resigned to their fate, and they know the planet's going to be wiped out, and humanity's going to be gone, and there's nothing that they can do. And through a miracle, it doesn't happen. And at first, when I was reading, I was like, well, that whole first section could probably just be cut out. When I got to the end, I actually realized that the ending of the story was really about the characters realizing that there are things worth fighting for, and that there are things worth believing in, and that there's no utility in giving up hope. And so in that particular case, like, that beginning was actually necessary to set up those character arcs. So actually, I ended up liking that a lot. Well, that's all I have for the critique section. And let's say conclusions. Okay, so this is a very good book, especially given the fact that it's like just 200 pages. It's a pretty short read. If you're looking for a short read, this is, you know, and you like science fiction, I think this is, you know, something that you're going to enjoy. It's heavily inspired by Dune and Star Wars, but I wouldn't call it derivative. Like, this is an original world that Novaheart built. It's definitely unique. I mean, there's giant lizard people. Again, she wrote a full series, so, you know, if you want to read a series, check it out. Science fiction series. And I guess that's really all I had. So, you know, it's pretty good. I liked it. And I guess that's really all I can say is, you know, it's worth picking up a copy and reading it if you like science fiction. So that's all I have for today, and I'm really, really thirsty, so I'm going to go get some water now. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a good one.